Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy Podcast. I'm Ani Anderson.
And I'm Brian Trzaskos. Join us as we explore the science
and art of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools.
Strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional.
Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence.
If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy Podcast. We are on episode 69 today.
69.
And I'm super excited to explore with you. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Ani.
How are you?
I'm doing great. And you?
I'm really good. Body, mind, spirit. I'm all here, ready and waiting for our topic today.
Our topic today, I'm really excited about this.
I am too.
Because oftentimes in our podcasts, we are kind of, we have some stuff figured out and we're kind of presenting our expert knowledge or experience or that kind of stuff.
We don't have it figured out today?
No, well, today is kind of an exploration. I want to kind of talk about kind of exploring the idea as sensations being the intersection between body, mind, and spirit.
Ooh, so today's podcast is going to be one day long. I hope you
it's going to be a whole full day
hours.
of exploration. I'll tell you when this question kind of occurred to me. A few months ago, I was in one of our training programs, and I was teaching a bit about the connective tissue and bioenergy. And one of the students said, "Is this the intersection between body, mind, and spirit?"
And you said, Eureka.
I was like, you know what? That's like a really great observation. And then it occurred to me that I teach that actually in other trainings. And so when I travel and teach a lot for rehabilitation professionals, one of the first slides we pull up is the holistic idea of body, mind, and spirit.
Right.
And then a lot of us kind of laugh about that. And we're like, well, how do you charge for that? And like, how do I document that I'm treating someone's spirit? And we kind of laugh. And I say, well, okay, so let's kind of pull this together. And we have to understand bioenergy, right, to really understand, like, that's the interface between our non-local, intangible, and tangible local selves sort of thing. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But then it occurred to me, wow, but bioenergy still actually might not really be the true interface, because if we talk about body, mind, and spirit, bioenergy, well, it does occur in association with the body. It's still not wholly tangible. So, which the body is.
Right.
So I thought, is there actually a deeper element, and our sensations the actual interface between body, mind, and spirit? So this is what I've been noodling on. This is what I've been kind of thinking about.
Okay, cool. So we do have to kind of do the substantial, insubstantial,
we do,
lay it out kind of thing.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, we have to kind of lay it out. So if we talk about how are we going to navigate this conversation, right? Because otherwise we could just be kind of blathering on about things.
Yeah, so, I'm just imagining the listeners, like you're really getting a peek into our lives
into
today,
what goes on.
Just to let you know.
Yeah. So whenever I step into some type of thinking process about this and a questioning process, I have to create some kind of structure for myself around it. And so if we create a structure of understanding body, mind, and spirit, so and just defining them a little bit, first of all, if we're talking about our sensations, the intersection between these three aspects of ourselves, they're not split apart, right? They're all aspects of ourselves. Like right now, we're living on a physical plane. Right now, we're living on a mental, emotional plane, which is, by the way, how we define mind, mental and emotional, and spirit on a spiritual plane, right? We're living on all three planes simultaneously.
And even saying that, it's like, yeah, but how do we know, or how is it defined? So keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So body. So what is our body aspect? Well, we can think about our body aspect as being what we call local and substantial.
It's right here. I see it. I can touch it and feel it.
Yeah, you can localize it. It's there.
It's right there.
I can see where it is. I can localize it in space, or locate it in space, and I can weigh it or like put it in a cup. You know what I mean? It's right. Substantial. There's substance associated with it.
Right.
So that's our body aspect.
Right.
Okay. Now, what about mind? Okay, so mind is an interesting thing, because when we think about mind as being mental, emotional, Like our mind, not thinking about universal mind right now. That's
Right.
actually would be kind of more like a spirit kind of idea, which we're getting to. But our your mind, like if I said, do you have a mind? And
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, how do you describe your mind? Most people describe their mind in a way where the mind is local to
Mm-hmm.
them,
Right.
right? It's local. It's like my mind.
Right.
And if like
What am I thinking about
if I'm
right now?
standing over there, if
Yeah.
I'm standing over there, my
Yeah.
mind is with me over there,
Right.
and I can feel something. If I walk over there, now my mind is with me over there.
Right.
So I can still locate it,
Yeah.
but it's not substantial,
Yeah.
right? I can't like reach in and pull
You
out
can't feel it.
part of my mind, right? I
Right.
couldn't put it in a cup and weigh it.
Right.
So your emotions, like they're local to you,
Right.
but you couldn't hold them in your hand. And same thing with your thoughts, right? They're local to you, but you can't hold them in your hand.
Right.
So they're local and insubstantial.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And then what about spirit? So spirit you can think about as being the aspect of ourselves that is non-local, non-substantial. So spirit as being something greater than our local selves,
Always
right? We're
there.
connected to
Oh,
something
yep.
greater than ourselves.
Yep.
So we can think about that as being a universal
Mm-hmm.
consciousness, or however you define spirit. My guess is it's something that's greater than yourself,
Right.
right? You're connected to something other than self, and it's also nowhere in particular,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's nowhere in particular. The little phrase I like to hear is that it's everywhere, but nowhere in
Nowhere.
particular,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? So our spirit is everywhere, but nowhere in particular. And but it's also insubstantial,
Yeah. You
right? You
can't touch it,
can't
feel it.
touch it, feel it, kind of thing. Well, you can't weigh it. Let's put that. Well, you see, because you can feel it potentially, but you
But
can't weigh it.
right. You can feel it. Is that part of your larger
Well, we think
hypothesis,
about
Tony?
sensations,
Okay.
right? So sensations are felt qualities. So that's what we're kind of getting to. Our sensations,
Uh-huh.
the intersection between body, mind, and spirit. Our
Mm-hmm.
intersection is the commonality between all of those parts of ourselves. So insubstantial means that not that you can't not feel it, it means you can't kind of hold it in your hands.
Never really thought about that before. This is just, yeah, this is really fascinating because we always talk about, I think I've said it the past 3 weeks, how we put the body, mind, spirit back together.
Hmm.
And we really are like the only people I know who are talking about this sensation based model like we do, which always makes so much sense to me. Like, that's really fascinating.
Yeah. So when I started thinking
Yeah.
about this, I was like, this is pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Because we do so much work in our sensation-based work.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we have kind of defined body, mind, and spirit based on local and substantiability,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Okay. So what are sensations? What are sensations? What are they
What
actually?
are they
What
actually,
are they?
Brian?
Well, they are, if you want to get right down to the nut of it, they are electrical and neurohormonal activity in your body,
Sure.
right? You have hormone activity in your body, or neural activity in your body that activates sensors in your body,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's all kinds of sensors in your body. There's four basic types of sensors in your body. And these four types there's subtypes to all of these. But we have mechanical sensors. So those sensors pick up information on like touch, light, deep, touch, sharp, sharp, dull, that kind of stuff. And then we have temperature. So that's hot, cold. And then we have a pH, which picks up acid, base, like whether your pH is above or below 7. And then we have what we call nociceptive sensors, which are threat sensors. So they're going to pick up information that happens in the body that potentially could damage tissue,
Mm-hmm. Tissue damage. Yeah.
damage sensors, and relate that information to the brain. So, just as a side note, there are no pain sensors in the body,
Right.
right? And so I know we've done some podcasts on that, but I'm also planning one in the very near future on specifically to go deep into some of those concepts. So
Great.
that's coming. So we have four types of sensors in the body, and these sensors are being activated, stimulated somehow. Now, you could have what we call peripheral sensors. Those are sensors like on your skin that are activating information. So I know I'm touching my skin because mechanical sensors are being activated right now. But we also have what we call the interoceptive nervous system, which is nervous system that is
Inside.
internal, gut. Think about our gut, our viscera, our blood vessels, like all those kinds of places too. Then and there's some deep sensors in the somatic, the muscular system as well, but they're kind of more internal, more deeply rooted kind of centers and systems. And there's some differences in how they're wired physiologically too, which is really, really fascinating. So just where we are right now, that excuse me, we have these four types of sensors: mechanical, temperature, chemical, and nociceptive. Now, um, some sensors, all sensors are connected to wires that come deeper into the nervous system. So, in other words, I've got a sensor in my finger and it picks up mechanical information. It's connected to a wire called an axon that goes all the way up into my spinal cord and then up into my brain so that it's processed. So all the information flows inward up into the higher nervous system, the spinal cord and the brain. And that information can be coming from your gut and then going up towards the brain for processing, or it can be coming from your feet or wherever. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, certain nerves, some of those wires in particular are what we call myelinated or unmyelinated. Now, what that means is myelin is the sheath, like the insulator that wraps a wire. So imagine, you think about your toaster. We have our toaster at home, and when we plug in the toaster, we get electricity that runs from the wall to the toaster. Now, could you imagine if the wire connecting the wall to the toaster didn't have that rubber wrapped around it and it was just an exposed wire? That would be kind of dangerous, right? You'd
Mm-hmm.
probably get a what? A
Shock.
shock from it. So the insulation wraps up that wire so that the impulse that enters into the sensor side can travel uninterrupted and influenced or modulated until it gets all the way to its endpoint. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so myelinated structures are newer. They're newer in terms of evolution. So humans, we have a lot of myelinated brain material, which is talks about why it's so fast, like how conduction can be so fast. And some myelinated tissue is faster than unmyelinated tissue because that insulate that wraps around, again, allows the information to travel really, really fast through it and uninterrupted. Actually, muscular, MS is a disease that multiple sclerosis is a disease that eats away at that myelin sheath, which causes energy to leak out and then weakness occurs in the body. So that's a disease that happens when myelinated axons are demyelinated by an autonomic immune process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know this sounds really sciencey, but hang in here with me for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So the newer nerve pathways are myelinated. Information travels faster along those pathways and also more specifically. So like if I poke myself with a pin on my finger, it feels sharp. That sharp information, which activates that sensor, gets brought more clearly into my nervous system along a myelinated pathway. We also have older pathways that are unmyelinated pathways, which do not conduct as fast and they do not conduct as specifically. So the information that comes through unmyelinated pathways are often more vague and more kind of convoluted. And our interoceptive nervous system, the nervous system that is wired through our gut, our viscera, our soma, where we feel things emotionally, those pathways are dominantly unmyelinated,
Sure.
which then made me, when I learned that, I was like, oh, so I wonder if that explains why oftentimes emotions feel very unclear,
That would make sense.
right?
Sure.
Because actually on an unmyelinated pathway, you could get a sensation be stimulated on one end of the pathway, but then there's no myelin on that sheath. So any other neurohormones or electrical activity that are on the sides of that pathway can also influence that information coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be very unclear, kind of
Right.
very cloudy, more murky, oftentimes even in conflict, right? We experience emotions that feel very conflicting to one another.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting. We start to think about just the how old our interoceptive nervous system, i.e., emotional or feeling state nervous system, is compared to our cognitive systems.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're just much older. They're more core to our experience of
Yeah.
who we are as humans.
Which is obviously reflected in the brain as well.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we start to kind of think about it's really interesting how it happens that way. Okay. So when we start thinking about the body mind spirit interface, when I think about sensations and I think about the body, I think it's pretty clear that sensations and the body make sense together,
Well, you feel them in the body.
right? We feel them in the body.
They're in the
The
body. I
sensors
can
are
be feeling
in the
something
body.
that
Yeah.
you're not feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. So sensors are local and they're in the body. And when I have something going with my body, I feel something and the sensors get activated.
Sure.
So is the idea that sensations kind of have an interface into the body make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
obvious, I
Right. That
think.
makes sense.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So what about mind? Let's think about mind. So if we think about mind as being a mental emotional, I think, what do you think about emotions? Do emotions have a sensory quality to them?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the basis of everything we do here with our sensation-based model.
Hmm.
Is there's a feeling associated or a sensation associated with an emotion.
Hmm. Yeah. And if you look at a lot of the work that Candace Pert did, right, with
Yeah.
molecules of emotion, right? So molecules also have a molecular signature or a
Mhm.
hormonal signature. And we talked about a lot of the sensors obviously in the interoceptive nervous system are neurohormonal sensors. So, excuse me. So when we have experience certain hormones in our body that will activate those neurohormonal sensors, then we have a felt quality associated with it,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
I think, the interesting about the mental part is, well, we do know that mental activity is electrical for
Hmm.
sure, right? Because otherwise, and also has to do with blood flow for sure, because otherwise we wouldn't show mental activity on fMRIs, for instance, or on EEGs or those types of things, right? So by that definition, also thoughts or mental activity are energetic too, right? That's why we say bioenergy is actually a part of that also,
Hmm.
right? Because blood flow changes, temperature changes, electrical changes, all have to do with energy. They're all forms of energy. So our thoughts must be energetic in some way because of that overlap. And so are there sensors associated with that? Well, I don't know if there's purely sensors in our brain that pick up that information because there's synaptic activity in the brain for sure. There are rooting centers between sensory and motor phenomenon in our brain for sure. So there is electrical activity going on that is being modulated by and interfacing with sensation coming from the body.
One of the things I think is interesting about what you're talking about mind is this idea that the mental and the emotional are both a part of it. So I know what I would say, but why are you putting those in the same bucket?
Mental emotional
Yeah.
in mind, but
Hmm.
just because it's a way to kind of define mind. Because I don't think you can. Well, if we come at this from a Chinese medicine perspective,
That's what
let's
I
say
thought you were going to say. Yeah.
that the heart mind, like the heart mind, the Shin is the center, we call the middle dantian, that's associated with our mental emotional kind of selves.
Right. And ancient peoples knew that uh, mind wasn't just purely thinking.
Mm,
And I think that a part also of what you're talking about that kind of makes sense to me is this idea that as humans, we're not just thinkers.
correct.
We're not just cortex. And I think from a spiritual perspective, if we talk about like what's the spiritual purpose of humans, I think, being human and having emotions is a human
Hmm.
experience. So to think that in terms of mind, we can have mind and have that be just a mental activity that has nothing to do with this vessel that we're in. Well, I mean, well, first of all, just as I say that mind, like what kind of information, mind,
Hmm.
intelligence, information would we be gathering from our experience without the senses? We wouldn't. We gather information with our intellect,
Hmm.
mind, whatever word you want, information in via our senses
Hmm.
from the external world. And again, as a human being, not just a spiritual being that doesn't have a body, but a human, we interact with the external world and we do that via senses.
Sure, yeah, and we interact with our internal world via senses as
Right.
well. Okay, so it sounds like so far kind of talked about, does the body or do sensations and the body interface? I think we clearly said yes on that one.
Sure.
Does the mind and sensations interface? I think we can pretty
Sure.
clearly say yes with that one. Okay, so that leaves spirit. Ooh. Okay,
Yeah.
so when I got here, I was like, how are we going to approach this one, Brian? Because we're talking about something that is
Non-local,
non-local and
non-substantial.
non-substantial. Okay, so I did a little bit of research. Okay. And I looked at some writings by William James. It's one of the forefathers of a lot of this work around psychotherapeutics and embodiment and that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. But I came across a really interesting paper by a character by the name of Douglas Schrader, who is a professor at a SUNY school. And he wrote a paper called "The Seven Characteristics of Mystical Experiences." Because I was curious, I was like, well, what are the characteristics of a spiritual experience?
Oh, okay.
Right. That's what I kind of searched.
Yeah.
And I
All
came
right.
up with a bunch of stuff. William James was on the list. And this guy wrote a paper based on some William James research
Oh,
and
interesting.
Haffold's research.
Just like it's interesting. It's
Yeah.
from a SUNY school.
Yeah. And his own experience too. So
Uh-huh.
this guy had a mystical experience
Okay.
in his early life that he actually couldn't understand, was trying to process and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Good
and
luck with that.
and so he researched like a lot of other research, excuse me, and studies, and wrote a paper about the seven characteristics. And I was like, well, I wonder what those are.
Uh-huh.
So here they are.
Okay.
So according to Douglas Schrader, here are the seven characteristics of mystical experiences. The first one is that they are ineffable,
Unexplainable.
unexplainable,
It's one of my favorite
right?
words.
They're
It's so much fun to
they're
say.
difficult to articulate. They're difficult to articulate or explain,
Talk
to
about.
talk about to someone. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, so um, that must mean then that spiritual experiences in some way disable cognitive processes,
Right, right. Yeah, if
right?
you can't explain it.
Because
That's
if
kind
you
of
can't
interesting.
explain it,
Yeah.
if you don't have the verbal capacity
Yeah.
to connect what it is that you experienced in word,
Yeah, your higher centers aren't
then
like
something with your cognitive capacity must in some way
sure.
be, I'm not saying disabled in a bad way, but I'm saying,
Maybe disabled in a good
yeah,
way.
disabled in a good way or something. Okay, so they're ineffable. So, so as important as language is, and you think about this too, right? Language is a very new skill compared to, and language uses a lot of those myelinated pathways
Sure.
versus unmyelinated pathways, which is the older, like more foundational, ancient kind of pathways within ourselves. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, so another one is that there's a notic quality to them. Notic,
Notic.
notic, which means that the notion that the mystical experience reveal an otherwise hidden or inaccessible knowledge.
Oh, I love that. That's so definitely true.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, like
So,
signs and patterns and
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and how
like
often when I'm
I
just
can't even
as
talk
a
about.
segue, like how often when we're working with clients doing our somatic coaching practices with them, and we're resourcing uh, information at the soma level, is something like revealed to them that had been hidden.
Or yeah, or comes up after the session.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is that like revealing type quality
Yeah.
and that like light bulb, aha,
Hmm.
enlightenment kind of moment.
Yeah, something's been hidden that's now been revealed.
Yeah, that's like a uh, predictable effect that we see all the time with the sensation
Base work. It
based
happens
work.
happens a lot. That noted quality.
A lot.
Anyway, so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay,
Okay.
so transiency. So the fact that the mystical experience lasts for a relatively brief period of time.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because it can be pretty intense. So anyway,
Intense.
so it happens,
I mean,
and
we think we want to live like that forever, and then when you have some of these things, you experience them, they can just be really
yeah,
intense.
it can be really, really intense. And sometimes they are longer, shorter than
Yeah.
others, or something like that. But there seems to be kind of a transient experience associated with it.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing with that too is we can oftentimes be in that experience or in the wake of the experience and think that everything is going to be changed forever. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden we wake up the next day and we're like, wait,
I still
I'm
have to wake
still
up
here
and
again.
eat
And there's
food and
that,
get my kids to school.
yeah, and I've got the same old issues that are showing
Yeah.
up. And there's that saying that before
Before
enlightenment,
enlightenment,
chop
chop
wood
wood
and
and
carry
carry
water,
water.
and after enlightenment, chop
Chop
wood
wood
and
and
carry
carry
water.
water. Yeah.
Yeah. sort of thing. So,
Uh-huh.
but we do it in a little bit different
We
way
do.
is kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going. So this is where it starts to get interesting.
But that was already
Yeah.
interesting.
Okay, so the next one is passivity. So the sense that mystical experiences happen to someone, they are somehow beyond the range of human volition and control.
Oh, like I'm not in charge.
Right, they're happening, kind of happening to me.
Haha, that reminds me of our soul's agenda process.
Okay.
Because we call this soul's agenda because it feels like the universe, spirit, God has an agenda for me.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's neat.
Interesting. What I kind of highlighted in this part of the statement, though, was passivity when he talks about defining that is a sense,
It so much of spiritual
a
kind of
sense,
is like
a
a sense.
sense that the
I have a
mystical
sense.
experience. Okay,
I
let's
have a
keep
sense.
going. Check this
The
out.
sixth senses, the
So
sixth sense or whatever. Like
the
it's
the
just funny.
the next one is unity of opposites. Unity of opposites.
Oh,
A,
get out of
a
here.
sense, a sense of oneness, wholeness, or completeness. And I would say, in the mystical spiritual experiences that I've had in my life, like that is 100% true, a sense of wholeness or oneness or completeness.
I think that's reflected in what our students and graduates and
Yeah.
their clients experience as well, and our clients
And
experience.
it's a sense.
It is. I mean, if I think about when
It
it's happened to me,
feels like
it
something.
feels like
It
something.
feels like something,
Yeah.
right?
It's all of a sudden this like it feels like something.
Yeah, it feels like something,
Yeah.
right? And we
Hmm.
identify, and we can't explain what it feels like, but it
Yeah.
feels like something. Okay.
Yeah. Are we having a mystical experience right
Right
now?
now, we're here now. Okay. Timelessness. A sense that the mystical experiences transcend time.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a sense of timelessness with it. And then this one actually starts off with, ready? It's not even in the definition. It's not even in like the how do you define the thing I just said. It's actually the thing he's saying himself is that a a feeling that one has somehow encountered the true self, a sense that mystical experiences reveal the true nature, reveal the nature of our true cosmic self. One is that beyond life and death, beyond difference and duality, and beyond ego and selfishness.
But it's experience as a
It's
feeling.
a feeling. And so all of the
Because how would you know if it wasn't experienced as a feeling?
exactly my point. Exactly. How would you know if it
You
wasn't
wouldn't
experienced as a
know.
feeling?
It has to be experienced as a feeling, or you don't
Or you
know.
don't know.
Doesn't
Right.
feel real.
Exactly. So I had a really interesting experience that I'd just kind of like to share really
Okay.
quick to kind of wrap this together. Like, is
Okay.
this true?
I'm buying it.
Is it true that sensations are the interface between body, mind, and spirit? So I remember, this is a couple decades ago now, after I moved back east here from living out west for a while. And I had a neighbor on our road. His name was Frank, and he was really good at fixing engines, at motor engine, like motorboats and that kind of stuff. We live out here on the lake, so we had a motorboat at the time, and I'm terrible at
I
that.
was gonna
I'm
say,
terrible at
so
that kind
good
of
for you.
stuff.
You
So
had
we were good
had
friends.
somebody in your
So
life.
so Frank would kind of like bring my engine to him, and he'd get us opened up in the spring and winterized in the winter and that kind of stuff. We got to be kind of close, and then Frank got lung cancer.
Mm.
And of course I'm in the health and wellness field, so I would spend a lot of time talking and working on his diet and giving him some uh, practices to do and making sure he had like really good water to drink and all those kinds of things. I was doing stuff. So we met, regularly for the year before he passed away, and we got to be pretty close friends. And a relationship I really kind of cherished with him. And I remember uh, I was meditating. We moved him off our road because it's kind of remote down here and hard to get in and out of. When he was starting to get a little sick towards the end, we moved him into town. And his girlfriend was staying with him at the time just to kind of take care of him. And I remember I was meditating one morning. And as I was meditating, I had this overwhelming sense of relief came over me.
You felt it.
Oh my God, it was so powerful. This overwhelming sense of relief and opening, and I can't even say it was it was relief. It was just absolute relief. And I kind of caught this vision of Frank kind of like floating. And I was like, oh my God, I think Frank just died.
Mm-hmm.
And literally 10 minutes later, I got a call from his girlfriend that he had passed away. And so I consider that a mystical or spiritual experience, right? I mean, that was not local to me. I mean, I was
Right, yeah.
experiencing it locally, but it was something that's happening somewhere else. I couldn't put it in a cup or put it on a scale. I couldn't weigh it. And to this day, when I think I was trying to recall this experience as I was prepping for this podcast, and honestly, Ani, as I was recalling it, I remember what it feels like. I don't remember exactly what I visualized. I vaguely remember Frank was a part of it. And I was trying to think, what did I actually see? Because I had an overwhelming sense of relief, and I saw Frank enough to realize I had to do something with Frank. If I hadn't seen him visually, I probably wouldn't have known why I had the oversense release until I got the call. But to this day, I don't really remember necessarily what I saw in my visual capacities, but I remember exactly what I felt.
Mm.
And it was this absolute just release and relief from pain, suffering,
Yeah.
whatever he was experiencing, and this re-entering into just a loving embrace. And I still remember that feeling.
You remember the
You know,
feeling.
so for me, I felt that in my body. I must have had some type of neural hormonal changes in my body in
Yeah.
order for me to actually feel that.
Right.
Like if I didn't have changes in my body, I wouldn't have felt that.
Right.
So something was happening internally in terms of hormone and nervous system changes that I could actually experience that thing fully. And there still must be some pathways associated with it now for me to be able to re-experience the feeling that I had of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so what that's worth, that's my little anecdotal experiment around our sensations, the interface between body, mind, and spirit.
It reminds me of, I've done a bunch of work with hospice throughout the course of my career, and it reminds me that when people get close to death, the thing that really matters the most is actually like feeling their relationships, like getting in touch with that felt quality. It's not what did I think about my life. It's
Right,
about
yeah.
feeling the connection with other human beings, and
Yeah.
they would describe that very often as a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, I think that you're really onto something. I'll look forward to your book.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Coming soon after a long list of other books.
Of other things to do.
Exactly. So thanks so much for joining us today. I hope that you found this, if not enlightening, entertaining to kind of get inside
our psyches
our world and how we kind of think and process about things. But I'm really excited about these connections that are potentially coming together.
Yeah.
And I'd love to be doing some more work with these.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Ba-dum-bum.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself.
Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.